My name is Arthur, and I'm what you'd call an old-timer. Not ancient, mind you, but old enough to have seen a few things. Old enough to remember when a handshake meant something and families stuck together like jam on toast. I raised my son, Mark, on my own after his mother, my sweet Clara, passed too soon. It wasn't easy juggling work at the mill and being both dad and mom, but Mark was my world. Every scraped knee, every school play, every proud moment. I was there. I poured everything I had into that boy, not just money, but my time, my heart. I thought we had a bond, you know, the kind that doesn't break. Turns out I was wrong. It started slowly, like a leaky tap you don't notice at first. Mark met Sarah. She was fine. A modern woman, career-focused, always seemed a bit too busy for an old codger like me. I tried to like her for Mark's sake, but I always felt like a piece of old furniture in their sleek new lives. Something. Tolerated but not really wanted. Then Mark started talking about how I was getting on. "Dad, you're not as spry as you used to be," he'd say, a little too casually. "Maybe you should think about a place with support. Support. That's what they called it." What he meant was a place to put me so I wouldn't be underfoot. The final conversation happened on a Sunday. They'd come over for dinner, which was rare enough. I'd made my famous pot roast, Clara's recipe. Sarah picked at hers. "Dad," Mark began, clearing his throat, avoiding my eyes. "Sarah and I found this really nice retirement community. It's got a great view, activities." My fork clattered onto my plate. "A retirement community," I said, my voice barely a whisper. "Mark, this is my home. Your mother and I built this life here." "I know, Dad, but it's a big house for one person. And you fell last month, remember? We worry. Funny, they hadn't seemed too worried when I was laid up for a week, and they only called twice. Sarah chimed in, her voice smooth as butter. "It's for the best, Arthur. You'll have people your own age. Less for Mark to stress about. Less for Mark to stress about. That was the kicker. I was a stressor, a burden. My own son. The boy I'd taught to ride his bike, the boy whose tears I'd dried 1,000 times, was looking at me like I was a problem to be solved. I didn't fight. What was the point? The light had gone out of his eyes when he looked at me, replaced by a kind of weary obligation. So I packed my few things, the pictures of Clara, my old fishing gear, and moved into a small, sterile apartment in Golden Meadows. It was clean, I'll give it that, and the view was of a parking lot. The activities were bingo and chair aerobics. I felt like a potted plant, left in a corner to wither. The loneliness was a heavy blanket, smothering me day and night. Mark called. Once a week, a quick, dutiful check-in. "How are you, Dad? Settling in? Good, gotta run." Click. Each call was a fresh stab in my already aching heart. He threw me away, my own son, like an old worn-out coat. I spent a lot of time thinking, in that bland little room, thinking about Clara, about Mark as a boy, about the dreams I'd had for us, and a cold, hard anger started to grow in the pit of my stomach. It wasn't a fiery, shouting anger, but a slow, simmering resentment. He thought I was a burden. He had no idea what a real burden looked like. He discarded me so easily. Well, maybe it was time I taught him a lesson he wouldn't forget. It wasn't about revenge, not really. It was about understanding. I wanted him to feel just a little bit what it was like to have your life completely upended, to be at someone else's mercy, to feel inconvenient, frailty. Plans started to form slowly. I knew I couldn't just show up on his doorstep. I needed a reason, a good one. And then, as if fate was giving me a nudge, I had a genuine, albeit small, health scare. A dizzy spell that led to a real fall in my little apartment. Nothing broken, thank goodness. Just a bad bruise and a knock to my pride. But it was the opening I needed. I called Mark, making my voice sound weaker than it was. "Mark, son, Phil again. The doctor, he said I shouldn't be alone right now." A pause on the other end. I could almost hear the gears turning in his head, the calculations. "Oh, Dad, that's not good. Are you okay?" "I'll manage," I said with a sigh that I hoped conveyed a world of frailty. "Just a bit shaken." He said I need someone to look in on me for a while, just till I'm steady on my feet again. Another pause. Well, Sarah and I are so busy with work, Dad. Oh, I know, son, I know. Wouldn't want to be a bother. I'll figure something out. I let that hang in the guilt hook. It worked. No, Dad, don't be silly. Of course, you can stay with us for a bit. Just for a little while until you're better. We have the guest room. The guest room. It was small, filled with Sarah's workout equipment and boxes of things they didn't. Nowhere else to put, but it was a start. The first few days I kept it low-key. I was pleasant, grateful, a little shaky on my feet but not too demanding. I wanted them to get used to me being there, to let their guard down. Sarah was polite, if a little strained. Mark was distracted, always on his phone, always talking about work. Then I started to gently turn the screw. It began with small things. Mark, son, could you give me a hand getting out of this chair? My back's awfully stiff today. I could get out of the chair just fine, but I'd grunt and groan, making a show of it. Sarah, dear, this tea is a bit weak. Could you make it a little stronger next time? And perhaps a biscuit. My blood sugar, you know. I didn't have blood sugar problems, but it sounded plausible. The nights were my prime time. Around 2 a.m., when I knew they'd be deep asleep, I'd call out, Mark, I need a glass of water. He'd stumble in, bleary-eyed. Dad, it's the middle of the night. There's a pitcher right there. Oh, is there? I didn't see it. My eyes aren't what they used to be. And my hand is a bit shaky tonight. Could you pour it for me? The sigh was audible. He'd pour the water, hand it to me, and stumble back to bed. An hour later. Mark, I think I heard a noise downstairs. Could you check? He was getting bags under his eyes. Sarah was starting to look at me with a distinct chill. Good, I forgot things. Where I put my glasses, on my head, what day it was, whether I'd taken my unnecessary medication. Each forgotten item, each moment of feigned confusion, added another layer of stress to their lives. Dad, we talked about this yesterday, Mark would say, his voice tight with forced patience. Did we, son? Oh dear, my memory is like a sieve these days. It's this darn age. Meals became an ordeal. Sarah, this chicken is a little dry for me. My dentures, you see. I didn't wear dentures. Could I have something softer? Or, is there any salt? This is a bit bland. I'd watch her jaw tighten as she got up to fetch the salt shaker I could have easily reached myself. I made sure to be particularly helpless when they had plans. One Saturday, they were getting ready to go out for dinner with friends. I'd heard them talking about it all week, how much they were looking forward to it. About an hour before they were due to leave, I started groaning. What's wrong, Dad? Mark asked, already half in his jacket. Oh, it's my stomach, son. A terrible pain. I don't think I should be left alone. I clutched my stomach dramatically. Their faces fell. I saw the flicker of annoyance in Sarah's eyes, the weary resignation in Mark's. They called their friends, canceled. Sarah went to their room and I heard the door click shut a little too firmly. Mark spent the evening bringing me warm water and asking if I felt better, his own evening ruined. The stomachache miraculously disappeared by bedtime. I wasn't enjoying this. Not really. There was a bitter taste in my mouth every time I played another card. But I'd see Mark, rushing around, stressed and tired, and I'd remember how easily he'd dismissed me, how quickly he'd signed me over to Golden Meadows. He needed to understand. The house, once their sleek, orderly sanctuary, started to feel a bit cluttered. I'd leave my newspaper open on the sofa, my cardigan draped over a chair. Small rebellions. I'd turn the TV up a little too loud, because my hearing isn't what it was. I'd ask them to repeat things constantly. One evening, Sarah snapped, I'd accidentally spilled a glass of water on her pristine white rug. Arthur, honestly, can't you be more careful? Her voice was sharp, cutting. Mark rushed in. Sarah, calm down, it was an accident. An accident, she cried. It's always something. He needs this, he needs that, he can't do anything for himself. We have no life anymore, Mark. It's like living. With a giant baby. The words hung in the air. A giant baby. A burden. I looked down, trying to appear wounded. Inside, a cold satisfaction bloomed. She was starting to get it. Mark looked torn. He opened his mouth, then closed it. He just sighed and went to get a cloth. That night, I heard them arguing, their voices low but tense from their bedroom. "Can't go on like this, Mark." "He's my father, Sarah." "For how long?" "He's not even trying." "What do you expect me to do? Kick him out?" Painful silence followed. The next morning, Mark looked like he hadn't slept at all. His face was gray, his eyes bloodshot. He sat down at the breakfast table opposite me, not even looking at the toast Sarah had put in front of him. "Dad," he said, his voice flat, "we need to talk." I put on my most innocent, slightly bewildered expression. "About what, son?" "About this situation. It's not working." "Oh," I said softly. "Am I being too much trouble? I'm so sorry. I'm trying my best, but I'm just so old." He ran a hand through his hair. "It's not just that, Dad. It's everything. Sarah's unhappy. I'm exhausted. We can't live like this." "So what are you saying, Mark?" I asked, keeping my voice gentle. "Are you sending me back to Golden Meadows?" He winced, as if the name itself pained him. We need to find a better solution. Maybe a place with more intensive care." More intensive care. Another euphemism for getting rid of me. He still didn't get it. He was just looking for another way to offload the problem. My own anger, the one I'd been simmering for months, suddenly boiled over. But it wasn't a shouting rage, it was cold, precise. "A better solution, Mark?" I said, my voice suddenly clear and strong, all frailty gone. Like Golden Meadows was a good solution. Looked up, surprised by the change in my tone. "Dad, you thought I was a burden then, didn't you?" I continued, my voice gaining strength. "An inconvenience, something to be tidied away so you and Sarah could live your perfect, uncluttered lives." "Dad, that's not fair, isn't it?" I leaned forward. "You threw me away, Mark. Your own father, after everything, after Clara died, who was there for you? Who worked 2 jobs to make sure you had everything you needed? Who cheered the loudest at your graduation?" Tears pricked my eyes, but I blinked them back. "I wouldn't cry. Not yet. I gave you my life, son. And when I got a little older, a little slower, you couldn't wait to pack me off." Mark was staring at me, his mouth slightly open. The fatigue was still there, but now it was mixed with confusion and a dawning horror. "So yes," I said, my voice dropping a little but still firm. "I decided to show you what a real burden looks like. I wanted you to feel, just for a little, what it's like to have your life dictated by someone else's needs. To be constantly interrupted, constantly catering to demands, constantly exhausted." I stood up from the chair easily, no grunts, no groans. "My back isn't that stiff, Mark. I can see the water pitcher just fine. I don't need help getting out of a chair, and my hearing is perfectly adequate for a man my age." Sarah had come to the doorway, listening, her face pale. You faked it?" Mark whispered. "All of it? The falls? The confusion?" "The fall at Golden Meadows was real enough," I admitted. "It gave me the idea. But most of this, yes. This was me teaching you a lesson you so desperately needed to learn." I looked him straight in the eye. "You wanted to know what a burden feels like, Mark? This is it. This is what you signed me up for. Only I was supposed to endure it from strangers, alone, after my own son decided I was too much trouble." The silence in the kitchen was thick, heavy. Mark just stared at me, his face a mask of disbelief and dawning shame. Sarah looked like she'd been slapped. I don't understand," Mark finally stammered. Why would you do that to us? Why did you do it to me?" I countered, my voice softer now, tinged with the sadness that had been my constant companion for months. "Did you ever once stop to think how I felt, Mark? Alone in that sterile room, waiting for your 5-minute phone call once a week? Did you think I wouldn't miss my home, my memories? Did you think I wouldn't miss my son?" The last words caught in my throat. The anger was fading, replaced by a vast, aching sorrow. Mark's face crumpled. He looked, for the first time in years, like the little boy who'd come running to me with a scraped knee. "Dad, I had no idea." "No," I said quietly. "You didn't. You were too busy, too stressed, too eager to get on with your own life. I was just an old problem you needed to solve." He buried his face in his hands. I could hear his shoulders shaking. Sarah stood frozen in the doorway, tears silently tracing paths down her cheeks. She looked at me, then at Mark, then back at me, her expression unreadable. I felt a strange mix of emotions. Vindication, yes, but also a profound sadness. This wasn't a victory, it was a tragedy that I'd had to go to such lengths to make my own son see me, to understand my pain. "I'm not a monster, Mark," I said, my voice weary. "I love you. That's why this hurts so much, and that's why I had to do this. Didn't want your pity. I wanted your understanding. I wanted you to see me as your father, not just an obligation." Mark lifted his head. His eyes were red, his face streaked with tears. "Oh, Dad," he choked out. "I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I've been such a fool. Such a terrible son." He got up, stumbled towards me, and did something he hadn't done in years. He hugged me. A real hug, tight and desperate. And this time I did cry. Old silent tears for everything we'd lost, and for the fragile hope that maybe, just maybe, we could find some of it again. Sarah approached slowly. "Arthur," she said, her voice trembling. I am so ashamed. I encouraged him. I just saw you as difficult. I didn't think about how you felt." "Well," I said, pulling back a little from Mark, though he kept a hand on my arm. "Maybe we all learned something. The days that followed were different. Awkward, at first. The truth lay bare between us, raw and uncomfortable. But it was also cleansing, like a thunderstorm that clears the air. Mark couldn't stop apologizing. He'd look at me with such guilt in his eyes, it almost made me feel bad for what I'd done. Almost. Sarah, to her credit, made an effort. She started asking me about Clara, about my life before. She even tried making Clara's pot roast, and while it wasn't quite the same, the gesture meant something. We talked, really talked, for hours. I told them about the loneliness, the feeling of being discarded. Mark told me about the pressures of his job, his fear of not being able to cope, how Sarah had felt overwhelmed by the thought of me living with them, permanently. It wasn't an excuse, he said, but an explanation. "I was weak, Dad," he confessed one evening. "I took the easy way out, and I convinced myself it was for your own good. But it was for my good, for my convenience. There was no easy fix. The trust was damaged on both sides. I couldn't just forget how quickly he'd been willing to put me aside, and they had to come to terms with the fact that I'd deliberately deceived them, manipulated them. But something had shifted. Mark started calling me every day, even after I eventually said I was ready to go back to my own house. My real home, not Golden Meadows. "Are you sure, Dad?" he asked, anxiety lacing his voice. We could make it work here. We could hire some help if you need it. Real help." I said. "It's time I went home. But not to be alone, Mark. Not anymore." He helped. He moved back. The old house felt a bit dusty, a bit empty, but it was mine. He and Sarah came over for dinner the first night. We sat around the old wooden table, the one where I'd had that fateful conversation with them. This time, though, the atmosphere was different. Lighter, more honest. Mark installed a new alarm system for me, just in case. Sarah brought over a plant, a cheerful yellow orchid. "To brighten the place up," she said, with a small, shy smile. They started visiting regularly. Not out of duty, I could tell, but because they wanted to. Sometimes Mark would just come by himself after work, and we'd sit on the porch and talk or watch a ball game like we used to. He'd tell me about his day, ask for my advice. He started seeing me again, not as Arthur the burden, but as Dad. My little lesson had been harsh, maybe too harsh. There were moments I regretted the deception, But then I'd remember the cold sterility of golden meadows, the ache of being forgotten, and I knew I'd done what I had to do, not for revenge, but for a chance to be seen, to be valued, to be a father again. Life isn't perfect now. There are still shadows, but the lines of communication are open. Mark calls. He visits. He helps with a leaky faucet or a stubborn jar lid without me even having to play the helpless old man. Sarah even asks for Clara's recipes sometimes. I learned that sometimes to be heard, you have to shout, even if your shout is a quiet, calculated performance of the very thing you're accused of being. And Mark? Mark learned that family isn't a convenience. It's a commitment, it's work, it's love. And it's worth more than any uncluttered, stress-free life he thought he wanted. He still looks at me sometimes with a touch of that guilt, a hint of wonder at what I pulled off. And I just give him a little smile. I'm his father. I taught him to ride a bike, to tie his shoes, to be a good man. And when he forgot one of the most important lessons, well, I just had to teach him again. This time, I think it stuck. This time, he understood what a real burden it is to break a father's heart. And more importantly, he started to understand what it means to try and mend it.